Our last video was a review of the Monoprice Select Mini, which we were kind of forced into doing because I'd broken our regular machine and needed to carry on creating projects for the Printable Science Initiative. To demonstrate our files are printer ready, our videos feature time-lapse video of the actual parts we've been using. And in order to keep on doing that, you need a camera stand, and we didn't have one for the Select Mini. So where did that lead us? Well, here's a project for a 3D printer camera stand that will work for just about any printer. And you can even print off on it on a machine as small as the Monoprice Select Mini. Printable Science presents a 3D printed camera stand for 3D printer print capture. To be honest, this wasn't the most challenging design task we've taken on. In fact, it's really just a reworking of the parts and principles in our 3D printed studio camera stand project. There's a link to that video up here. The concept is quite simple. We have a base to give the stand a stable platform, and it's flat so you can always put a weight on top of it if you need more stability. A tube sits in the back of the stand and you can secure it in place with a 1/4-inch bolt that you've either purchased from the hardware store or printed off on your own machine. The tube is just some regular 1/2-inch PVC pipe cut to length. If you're one of our Patreon supporters and you'd like to use a different diameter or type of pipe, just drop around our Patreon page and learn how easy it is to get custom files for this and other printable science projects. The magic happens at the other end of the pipe, where we print and then assemble a 2-axis joint for a standard tripod screw mount. This saves us a bit of space and bulkiness from the 3-axis joint in our pipe clamp camera stand, and we're going to assume there's not going to be any need to adjust the rotation of the roll, just back and forth. This joint just slips onto the top of the pipe and you can tighten the bolt to any height you like. You can then adjust the tilt so that in combination with the height you can capture the best angle and view of your printer's bed. Once that's taken care of, you can attach any camera with a standard 3/4-inch, standard 1/4-inch thread to the top of it, and you're good to go. As we like to use a smartphone whenever possible, we've also included the files from our universal smartphone holder, so setting things up with your phone should be a snap. We printed our camera stand in PLA with a 0.2mm layer height, 3 top layers, 3 bottom layers, and 2 perimeters for a 0.4mm nozzle. If you're printing your bolts, go for a 75% infill, and all the other parts you can print at 20% infill. Putting it all together is straightforward, so let's look at the sub-assemblies first. You first need to decide whether you're going to use 1/4-inch diameter metal bolts or go with 3D printed ones, though we'd recommend buying the bolts you need, because you need that security for something expensive like a camera that's hanging on and relying on the security that your joints are offering. Unless, of course, you've got a 3D printer that prints metal. If you're going with bolts you've bought, you'll find it handy to epoxy our bolt covers onto the ends so that you can tighten and loosen the connections with just your fingers. We use epoxy for most of our gluing chores, and we highly recommend our epoxy workstation to help you with this and other gluing tasks. There's a link to that project up here. Of course, if you're not using the 3D printed bolts, you certainly don't have to print them, so that'll save you a bit of time. Likewise, if you're going with the printed bolts, don't waste filament on bolt covers. You'll need a total of 4 1/4-inch diameter bolts, 3 of which are 1/2-inch to 3/4 inch long, and 1 which has to be 3/4 inch long. That's the one you use for the tripod mount. You should glue caps onto the other 3. Your next option is to decide whether you're going to use a piece of 1/2-inch PVC tubing for the mount or print the number of sections you need and glue them together. We printed off 3 sections just for fun. Normally we'd use PVC tubing, but we just wanted to show you that, like most printable science projects, you really can complete most of them without using anything more than 3D printed parts. As I mentioned, we created this camera mount for a Monoprice Select Mini, which requires about a 9.5-inch high tube. If you need a longer tube, Just use a longer piece of PVC or print off and glue as many as 3D printed tube sections as you require. The tripod mounting screw is a little more tricky. It has 5 parts. The first is a 1/4 inch diameter, 3/4 inch long bolt. Once again, if you bought a metal one, which we recommend, then don't bother printing one. Then there's a bolt collar cover, and an axle. Finally, there's a custom spanner so you can tighten down the axle on the bolt. You'll probably find just grabbing the spanner with your fingers gives you a good enough grip, but if your hands are slippery and it's a tough go, you can consider printing off our socket nut driver. There's a link to that project right here. So here are the assembly steps. First, epoxy the bolt into the bolt collar and give that some time to set. Then, insert the bolt into the tripod mount plate and thread the axle onto the bolt. Here's where you use the custom spanner. It allows you to tighten down the axle with ease. You may find it useful to just hold the large bolt cover in place while you're screwing in the axle so the bolt doesn't spin while you're tightening down the axle. With that all done, just apply some epoxy to the bolt head and collar and slide the cover into place and give everything a chance to set. Final assembly is a breeze. Simply insert your pipe into the bottom stand and use a bolt to fasten it in place. Then take the cylindrical part of the tripod mount and slide it into the other top piece, and using another one of your bolts, fasten it in place. Finally, slide that assembly onto the pipe and using your last bolt, fasten that to the required vertical position on your pipe. Your 3D printed 3D printer camera stand is now complete. Unless you want it for your smartphone, no problem. Just take the 2-piece smartphone camera clamp that you've printed, we hope, slide the smaller piece into the larger, and then wrap a couple of rubber bands around the 2 pieces. You'll note there are 2 holes on the bottom piece. The large one has a threaded hole that will fit on your tripod mount thread. Just hold it into position and use the large bolt cover to tighten it in position. Now, all you have to do is slide your smartphone into the clamp and you're all done, except for adjusting it for your particular 3D printer. Thanks for watching. And won't you help by becoming an important part of the Printable Science family and making this channel more valuable and successful? You can help us out by taking the time to watch this video in its entirety and other Printable Science videos as well. Perhaps this is something you could do while you're waiting for your 3D printer to spit out the parts you require for this project. You can leave comments and questions below. That will help us to continue to create useful videos and 3D STL files that are printer ready and help you to maximize the power and utility of your 3D printer. Your feedback is very important. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button. And if you have just a moment, won't you show your support by clicking the subscribe button below? If you want to make sure you don't miss our upcoming videos on 3D printing, you'll also want to click on the notify bell as well. And please consider supporting Printable Science on Patreon using the link supplied below. You can become one of our Patreon supporters for as little as $1 a month, and it'll provide you with lots of extras and additional information, as well as going a long way to defray the cost of making these files and videos. Down below, you'll also find a link where you can download a copy of the STL files from Thingiverse so that you can print your own 3D printer camera stand. As always, you can download a copy of the STL files for this and other projects directly from our website. The latest files and a discussion board on our 3D printed 3D printer camera stand are available at the printablescience.com website, where all the science that fits, whoa, we print.